Hello my dear friends, you're in the military summary channel. In this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first let's talk about the conflict on the territory of Ukraine. During the previous 12 hours we received lots of very important details and updates, and it seems that the conflict between Russia and Ukraine enters completely different phase. So let's discuss everything in details, and first let's talk about the Russian attempt to carry out a massive attack. Yesterday in the evening, we start receiving reports that 4 Tu-22M3 strategic bombers have taken off from the Engels-2 airbase. Their initial course is southward. There is a threat of Tu-22 cruise missile strikes on Zmyny Island and Odesa and Mykolaiv regions. So Russia's aircraft Tu-22M3 began moving from the area of the city of Saratov, more precisely from the Engels-2 airfield in this southwestern direction, with the purpose to get this territory, and then from the area of Crimea to attack deep inside of the territory of Ukraine, or some objects in the area of the cities like Zaporizhzhia, Dnipro, or Odessa. So later we received this interesting picture where we can see the approximate territories that the Russians could attack with these strategic aircraft, and several hours later we received the report that the Russian Tu-22M3 aircrafts were recorded in the area of Crimea. 4 Tu-22M3 bombers are approaching launch positions over the Black Sea. Missile launches of Tu-22 missiles are expected shortly. Residents of southern regions are urged to take shelters immediately. And when the Russians took these positions, the Russians began bombing and attacking the city of Odessa, and we'll start receiving updates on this matter. The Russian Tu-22M3 aircraft began launching their missiles, and we start receiving first pictures and first updates on this matter. And this is approximate visualization of Tu-22 missile attack on the south of Ukraine. At around 6 p.m. 4 Tu-22M3 aircraft were observed taking off heading south to cover the bombers. 2 Su-30 aircraft took off around at 6:30. And at around 8 p.m. strikes were carried out with 3 Tu-22 missiles targeting the Odesa and Mykolaiv regions. So as a result of attack, lots of explosions were recorded. As for example, the Mykolaiv region, the Russians were attacking something in this area, but as of the beginning of the 16th of July of 2026, we don't know for sure what exactly the Russians were attacking. But as for the Odesa region, we have lots of updates. The Russians were attacking port infrastructure, the Russians were attacking fuel tanks, the Russians were attacking everything that could ruin the export capabilities of Ukraine. Furthermore, the Russians were attacking the Odessa region not just with the strategic bombers, the Russians were attacking this territory also with drones. And during the previous 12 hours, we received lots of videos on this matter. For example, in this video, we can see drones, Russian drones that were attacking vessels in this area. As you can see, the Russians managed to attack lots of vessels through the Odessa region. We have videos not just of drones approaching targets, we have lots of videos where we can see the consequences of attack. In this video we can see another vessel that was badly damaged by Russians. We can see a fire broke out right after the Russians attacked the territory of this port infrastructure. Furthermore, the Russians destroyed another vessel in the northern parts, and here we can see another vessel that was attacked and destroyed by Russians, but probably with the use of drones, not with the use of Tu-22 missiles that were launched by Tu-22M3 aircraft. So during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to deal significant damage to the city of Odessa. We received lots of videos, and the sources reported that several enterprises were damaged, and the Russians reported that they were mainly attacking port infrastructure of Yuzhny and Odessa. And these attacks carried out by Russians weren't the only attacks that the Russians carried out during the previous night. Later, we start receiving reports that the Russians began attacking the city of Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine. For these purposes, the Russians were using Iskander missiles. The sources reported that the Russians deployed 6 Iskander missiles of S-400 type surface-to-air missiles missile systems, and 3 Iskander-M ballistic missiles targeting Kyiv and its outskirts. Lots of damages were recorded, and it seems that the Ukrainians were trying to bring down the Russian missiles using their air defense systems, using their Patriot systems, but it seems that the Ukrainians haven't managed to intercept the Russia's missiles, and the Russians managed to deal significant damage. Later, we received this satellite picture where we can see fire anomalies through the city of Kyiv, and as you can see, according to this picture, at least 2 fire anomalies were recorded, one of them through the western parts of the capital Ukraine and the second one through the eastern parts. Let's discuss in details. As for the eastern parts, the Russians attacked this territory. More precisely, this territory was attacked by Russians, and we received pictures on this matter, and as you can see, according to this picture, the Russians first of all destroyed this warehouse, these barracks and hangars, and furthermore the Russians managed to destroy several trucks that most likely the Ukrainians were using as drone carriers. Furthermore, as we discussed, the Russians also attacked the western parts of Ukraine, and as for the western part, these facilities were attacked, and here we can see also lots of different buildings, lots of vehicles, lots of trucks, just vehicles that the Ukrainians could use for military purposes. And the most important about these two places that were attacked by Russians is that very big fire anomalies were recorded. So something big was attacked and something big was destroyed by Russians. Another important thing and another important detail is that the Ukrainians this morning reported that the Russians used 164 air vehicles, but the Ukrainians managed to bring down just 132, including 129 drones and just 3 ballistic missiles. So most likely the Russians were planning to continue attacking the capital of Ukraine, the city of Kyiv, and probably different towns and cities through Ukraine, but suddenly the Ukrainians began attacking the territory of Russia, and this picture was published probably a few hours later after the Russians finished their attack on the territory of the city of Kyiv with Iskander missiles. And this attack carried out by Russians took place ended somewhere at 1 a.m. of the 16th of July of 2026, and the Ukrainians, as you can see according to this picture, launched hundreds of drones deep inside of the territory of Russia. The Ukrainians were attacking 2 directions. The southern direction, as usually, the territory of the Azov Sea and the Black Sea, and the Ukrainians began attacking, which is a very important situation, the city of Saratov, more precisely the city of Engels and the Engels airfield. So this is one of the most important pieces of news, because the Engels airfield is the strategic airfield that the Russians used to launch attacks with the Tu-22M3 in the direction of Odesa. And not just during the previous attack, almost every single attack that has been carried out by Russians since the beginning of the special military operation involved the Engels-2 airfield for the massive attack purposes. So that is why the Ukrainians were trying to either attack these Tu-22M3 that returned back on the territory of this airfield with the purpose to damage them, or the Ukrainians were trying to attack this airfield with the purpose not to allow the Russians to launch more waves of attack. And during the previous 24 hours, we received lots of videos on this matter. In this video, we can see a Ukrainian drone that was moving in the direction of the airfield, but the drone struck a building that was on its way. In this video, we can see a night battle over the territory of the strategic airfield Engels-2. So the Russians were trying to repel this attack, trying to not allow the Ukrainians to damage strategic aviation, strategic aircraft, and it seems that the Russians managed to repel this attack despite the fact that the Ukrainians used hundreds of drones. In this video we can see Geraint type drone. As you can see, the Ukrainians began using drones like Russians in the direction of this Engels-2 airfield, but anyway, despite the fact that most likely this attack was repelled by Russians, we believe that the Russians were forced to change their plans. So most likely this is new tactics that the Ukrainians are going to use in the the future. Every time the Russians attack the territory of Ukraine, the Ukrainians would try to attack strategic airfields with the purpose to force the Russians to change their plans. So this is the situation as of this first attempt from the Ukrainian side. We see that the Ukrainians haven't managed to achieve results. The Russians managed to finish strikes. The Russians once again attacked the city of Odesa, and lots of vessels were damaged and destroyed. As for the city of Kyiv, at least 2 military enterprises and several parking sites where the trucks were destroyed by the armed forces of the Russian Federation. Now let's talk about the city of Kyiv. Let's continue with the city of Kyiv because, as you may know, currently there is a very big political scandal is brewing in Ukraine. And this political scandal is connected with a person with the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Fedorov. So according to information we have, Fedorov steps down as Ukraine's defense minister, or at least the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, and the minister and the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, Ukraine, Syrsky, were planning to create this situation. And but right after we start receiving these reports that the Minister of Defense of Ukraine is going to leave his position under the pressure of Zelensky and Syrsky, we start receiving reports that the Ukrainians, the civilians, Ukrainians don't like this situation. And according to information we have, Zelensky was planning to replace Fedorov with Klimenko. So if you don't know who Klimenko is, I would like to point to attention that Igor Klimenko, Zelensky was planning to assign this person on the position of the Minister of Defense of Ukraine. And according to information we have, Igor Klimenko is the head of the police department of Ukraine. So this is a very important situation. So as for Fedorov, as for this person, he is like he is the guy who understands IT technologies, who understands drones and many other different things, what to use, how to fight with Russians. As for Klimenko, he's the head of the Ukraine's police. And this is a very important situation because the most important task for Zelensky was to intensify and to accelerate mobilization. And according to Zelensky, Fedorov haven't managed to handle the situation. He haven't managed to change the entire process of mobilization and recruitment. So this is the reason why he was dismissed. And his personal conflict with the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine. And Zelensky, due to the current situation along the line of combat contact, decided to replace Fedorov, a person who understands IT, who understands all these things, with a person from police department. So he did this, he tried to do this because one thing, because when talking about the mobilization process on the territory of Ukraine, there are always two groups of people who mobilize Ukrainians. So there is one group, but this group consists of two types of people. The first one, recruiters themselves, and the second one, police officers. So Zelensky was planning to accelerate the mobilization process by making this person, Igor Klimenko, as the head of the Minister of Defense, because he believed, because this person has connections with the mobilization process, and Zelensky believed that this person would be able to accelerate the mobilization process before autumn or even before possible mobilization from the Russian side, which according to Zelensky should begin somewhere during the September of 2026. But once again, people didn't like this idea, because when talking about Fedorov, he is the Minister of Defense of Ukraine when the Ukrainians began attacking Russia using mid-range and long-range strikes. Exactly with this Minister of Defense, the Ukrainians attacked the Sea of Azov, the eastern part of the Black Sea. The Ukrainians established complete control over main supply lines and roads through the Kherson, Zaporizhzhia, Crimea regions. Because of this Minister of Defense, the Ukrainians managed to deal significant damage to oil refineries through the territory of Russia. And Ukrainians, with this Minister of Defense, for the first time probably since the beginning of the special military operation, believed that that there are chances that the conflict between Russia and Ukraine could be finished not in complete Russian favor. So, but the problem is that as of now, mobilization is much more important than damage. So that is why people across Ukraine began riots and began protesting against Zelensky, against resignation of Defense Minister. And today we start receiving lots of updates on this matter. People all over the entire territory, Ukraine, started protests against this situation. We have a lot of videos on this matter, and it's just the morning. The picture that you can see in front of your screens is the situation on the morning of the 16th of July of 2026, and people promise that the situation will worsen and will accelerate or intensify by the end of the 16th of July. So, telling the truth, there are very high chances that under such a pressure and under such a protest, everything is possible, and this is a very dangerous situation also for the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, because he can lose his position. He can lose his position if people will continue pressure. And we need to understand people, civilians, because they understand that if Klimenko becomes the Minister of Defense and if Ukraine intensifies mobilization, this new type of mobilization will touch every single family of Ukraine. Every single father, every single brother, every single son will be touched and will be under this new type model of mobilization according to the new Minister of Defense. So that is why for people, for Ukrainians, it is much more important to have Fedorov as the Minister of Defense, because he found another approach how to fight with the Russians in the special military operation using drones but not people. So this is the situation. Let's wait and see what is going to happen next. But as of the moment when I started making this video, we received the report that the Ukrainians, Zelensky, and the main party of Ukraine changed their position regarding Fedorov, and they decided to postpone the situation. So probably Fedorov will remain as the Minister of Defense of Ukraine. This is a very important situation. But from the other side, if it happens, if Fedorov stays as the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, then most likely Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Syrsky, and Chief of the General Staff of Ukraine, Ignatov, would be forced to leave their positions, because according to information we have, Syrsky yesterday issued an ultimatum to Zelensky, and there was a very simple question: either Syrsky or Fedorov. And Zelensky made his decision, and he decided to keep Syrsky on his position. So this is a very interesting situation that can lead to unpredictable consequences, because after the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, reported about this situation with Fedorov, with replacement of Fedorov, several commanders of Ukraine also resigned from their positions. For example, Deputy Commander of the Ukrainian Air Force, Pavel Yelizarov, resigned from his post, stating he no longer wishes to serve in the Ukrainian military forces following the dismissal of Mikhail Fedorov from the Defense Ministry. This is a vital and decisive moment for Ukraine, and from this very moment everything is possible, including the situation when protest won't finish. But the most important thing, that of course drones probably made some situation for Russians for their logistics, badly damaged the Russian logistics and so on, but without manpower, without soldiers on the ground, most likely the Ukrainians will not be able to hold lines even with thousands of drones. So that is why the situation is very difficult for Zelensky and for Ukraine, and what kind of decision the Ukrainians are going to make will change and will affect the results, probably even of the special military operation. Meanwhile, we received the report that the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer, arrived in Kyiv, and today he's going to probably support Zelensky during this very difficult decision. But the current situation is that most likely nobody is able to stabilize or to save the reputation of the authorities of Ukraine under these circumstances. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation on the ground. During the previous 12 hours, lots of very interesting changes were recorded. And first, let's talk about the Zaporizhzhia direction. These days, we received lots of changes through the western Zaporizhzhia direction on the way towards the city of Orehov from the west. And these are the changes just between the previous 2 days that were recorded by different sources. This is the end of the 14th of July. This is the end of the 15th of July. And this is already the beginning of the 16th of July of 2026. The Russians, as you can see, improved their position significantly, and it seems that this is something like a breakthrough that the Ukrainians are not able to stop or to stabilize. Now let's move further. As for the Kupiansk, as for the Slaviansk-Konstantinovka direction, no changes were recorded, just lots of updates. Now let's talk about the northern directions. During the previous 24 hours, additional changes were recorded through the Kharkiv direction. More precisely, we received the video from the area to the north of the city of Kharkiv, and in this video we can see how Ukrainians were attacking this forest in the area of the Trevianska water reservoir. We will adjust this territory in coming hours, but this video confirms that the Russians began offensive operation in this area as well, and the Russians are trying to advance in the area of the village by the name of Male Prohody on the western bank of the Trevianska water reservoir. So the situation is quite difficult, as we can see, and this summer is turning against the Ukrainian side on the matter of the Minister of Defense of Ukraine and his future. And that's it for the short video. The Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye-bye.